Thank you so much, Serena Fugate from We Make Indiana, coming on to Unscripted with Daniel. This is great. Thank you for coming in. Can you tell me a bit about We Make Indiana, its goals maybe?
Sure. Hi, Daniel. Thanks for having me. My name is Serena Fugate. I am currently a intern organizer for We Make Indiana. We Make Indiana is a nonpartisan, multiracial, multi-faith grassroots organization. Our goal is really to develop relationships within the community and empower people to organize and go to city officials and tell them what they want so that we can have a safer Indiana for all of us. So when we first started We Make Indiana, they started to organize in Porter County. Garrett Bladd, he's the main organizer for Porter County. He's been organizing for 8 years, and his goal was to form relationships here. So he met with congregations in the area, and he worked with about 8 of them. And then those congregations formed relationships, and then they started to organize and meet with city officials. And they decided that they wanted to talk about housing, and that housing was most important to everyone. And then that's how we got involved in housing.
Wow. So it wasn't necessarily started with the goal of housing, but it just sort of morphed into that because of what the people, they just started talking and they were like, this is the biggest issue that we are facing. Is that essentially how it unfolded?
Yeah, so We Make Indiana actually has chapters in St. Joe as well as Porter County. So in St. Joe, they're working on other issues. So they take problems and then they narrow those down to issues that they would like to address. And in Porter County, they narrowed it down to housing. So this is something we're working on currently. And in the future, we'll probably be working on many things. But the residents of Porter County said that housing was a big issue. And a lot of the congregations had seen a lot of housing insecurities and people experiencing homelessness, so that was dear to their hearts. So with the housing issue, we started researching housing because we have an implementation team, so we're a team of leaders that met with city officials, and they kind of narrowed it down to zoning being one of the most important issues of why people experience homelessness. And we just actually had forums all of September and October, meeting with different congregations and having our leaders lead those. Cool. And Amisha and we did one at the Valparaiso Library for anyone that wasn't in a congregation.
Oh.
Carmen actually attended.
Oh, yeah, I've already interviewed her. Yep.
So we educated the public on where zoning comes from, the fact that Valparaiso used to be a sundown town, why those zoning restrictions were implemented in the first place, and why everything's so compounded now due to the 2008 recession, on top of more zoning laws being applied, and then, of course, the pandemic compounding that as well. And then here we are.
That's really interesting. Were there and are there still remnants of the fact that we were a sundown town, Valparaiso, a sundown town, in the UDO?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's why we're educating the public to show them, look, these laws were made to keep people out. That's why most of our zoning laws have single-family homes. They're more expensive, they take up a lot more land, and you can have a lot less people on them. And even just looking at the zoning map is really confusing, and you'll see that, multifamily homes are illegal in most of Valparaiso. Yeah.
And that's purposeful. At least it seems that way.
Yeah, if you look at the history, and we did these going back to 1969, Valparaiso actually had their first African-American family. So it wasn't too long ago, I think about 55 years ago. And they weren't welcomed. They had people standing outside their home to make sure they were safe with guards because they were trying to be run out of town. And then let's see, I'm trying to look at this. And then beginning in 1930s, there was redlining happening. And these zoning restrictions have not changed too much since then. And they've just kind of always been there, and no one's questioned that. And if they have, nothing's changed.
Yeah, that is a problem. Because it's, the law sort of can determine how people can live in our city and how equitably they can. And, even if we take race out of the equation, there's people just in our city who work here, but who cannot afford to live here.
Right.
And that's a problem too, as well as the race issue that finds itself in the UDO to this day. That's really interesting. I'd be curious to see the specific. I suppose it's just the fact that there are a very small number of multifamily home designations or allowances around our city that is a remnant of that time that perhaps sort of can be interpreted as something that is a racist remnant.
Yes. And, I can't speak for city officials, but I do know that they might not realize that it is this way, or they might. However, when you said this is also about people that work here and can't live here, I've experienced that myself. I have worked in Valparaiso for 30 years. I've lived here. The reason why I got connected with We Make Indiana is because I have experienced homelessness myself when my son was younger. I actually gave my testimony at the Housing Assembly back in May. I was working 2 jobs, but could not afford rent in Valparaiso. I was making too much for assistance, but not enough to live here. And that continues to this day. I live in Valparaiso, but it is a struggle to maintain my housing. Even as a social worker with a master's degree, the rent is, $1,400 plus NIPSCO, which is around $250. It's really not made for like our teachers and our police officers, people that need to work here, and we need these people in our community. You would think that they wouldn't want them here with the way that the laws are set up.
Yeah. That's really unfortunate. Wow. Well, what can we do to, this is just a question that's coming out of this conversation, what can we do we can't change their opinion or really force them to think differently, but I wonder how we can maybe present it to city officials so that they can understand the history and really know how it affects people.
So this is one of the questions that We Make Indiana does take action on. Our big thing in organizing is taking action, not just sitting back and kind of talking about the problem and being aware of the problem, but empowering people to become active in their communities. So what we've done is we build relationships in each of the congregations or out in the community, and we get those people to organize. And then we go to our city officials. We've met with all of the city council members but 2 over the past year, talking about zoning and telling them how important it was and forming relationships. We've met with the mayor multiple times. We've met with the city planner, Bob Thompson, who will be helping with the UDO, obviously. They just hired a firm. So what we've done is, we want to tell them what we want. This is kind of what we want. We want more multifamily homes, and we want to be part of the process. And when we had our meeting with Bob Thompson, he did consider We Make Indiana a stakeholder. And he said right now is the time, it's a very unique time in Valparaiso for anyone that should and could influence the UDO. They should come out now. I've been going to city council meetings, and they've been talking a little bit about pieces of the UDO with gas stations coming in and what they don't want. They did give us a new timeline that is going to be about 24 months, which originally they said about a year. So it's about twice as long. However, what we can do is educate our city officials, go to our city leaders and say, we need to be led. This is what we want right now. Let them know this is important to us because our voices do matter. So we can change that. We can say, we want more housing in Valparaiso so we have less people experiencing homelessness. We want our teachers to be able to live here. We want our nurses to be able to live here.
Yeah, that seems to be one of the common threads, that just the middle class doesn't have a home here. It's just really they should, and we should be accommodating to a lot of varied income levels so that there's less homelessness. I think that's pretty common sense. But so that's good. They're considering you and We Make Indiana a stakeholder in this UDO process. Is Project Neighbors a part of that, or they are more like we are the builders and you are the advocates as We Make? Is that sort of the dynamic there?
So I mean, Project Neighbors, they're amazing, and Paul Schreiner, he's actually a member of We Make Indiana, and his wife Jane as well. And like I said, Carmen Vincent, she came to one of our forums, and she was happy with the momentum that we were keeping going. But as far as them being stakeholders, I would think so. Yeah, I would hope so, because the middle class is not represented here, but we also need people that are not part of the middle class as well. We need housing for them. And something we've heard in our meetings with city officials, not from all of them, but from a few, is let's leave the low-income housing up to the nonprofit. And there's this thing that, well, the nonprofits are also having a hard time building. As you've talked to Carmen and I've talked to Paul. They need to be able to build. And Project Neighbors, they had to get a variance to be able to do that,
right? Because
it was illegal for them to do so. And we're talking about getting rid of these restrictions so that they don't have to get a variance, so it doesn't take 6 months longer to however long it takes extra just to get it approved,
right?
So that more people can live here.
Through the BZA, it sounds like it's a horribly long process and can be very expensive for anything that is very different from what the UDO presents. And it just seems like a horrible way to do it. But one of the things that Paul said was that the UDO smooths the way, but the RDC can act as something that can really make housing costs go down. I said the RDC, right?
Yes.
So the RDC, they get the derelict land, low prices, and then if they, say with this project east of 49, say, okay, here's our stakeholders. We Make Indiana. We have Project Neighbors. There's some other group that does housing.
I forget. Habitat for Humanity?
Habitat for Humanity, maybe. Here's their plots of land that we're going to set up for them to get that land cheap. And also, this land is so cheap that it makes it have an incentive for for-profit builders to build multifamily homes, to build apartments. And so that's one of the ideas that Paul presented to me, and I think seems like a pretty good idea. Do you see any holes in it? Any sides to that sort of
Paul's
proposal?
A smart guy.
Yeah.
And I would love to see that happen as well.
Yeah.
Because like I said, we need more housing for people with lower incomes. And those people are working. Like I said, I was low income with my son, and I was working 2 jobs and still could not afford housing. So people have this dreaded Section 8 in their minds when they're talking about affordable or attainable housing. We're just talking about everybody being able to live here, of all different economic levels, all different races, all different education levels, and by giving them, housing is healthcare. That is the first step. People need housing, and I don't see holes in Paul's proposal. I think that would be great. I think that would be great to offer it to the nonprofits. CoAction is also a local nonprofit that does housing.
Yeah, so that's probably something I'm going to be going to this meeting on Wednesday, and if nobody else says it, I'll put it in there as an idea.
Okay.
But yeah, so let's see. I don't have anything else written down here, but if you have anything on your mind that you want to say,
I've been with We Make Indiana since May, and it truly is being built upon building relationships. I had seen it maybe once on a Facebook post, didn't think much of it. And then I actually had a friend that I volunteered with at a Living Hope church. Her name's Hope. She's a nurse in town. And she called me one night and said, hey, I think you might be interested in this. We're having this housing assembly with We Make Indiana. She told me a little bit about zoning. We need people to share their stories. Would you be willing? And I said, yeah, I would really like to do that. It was really healing for me because in sharing my testimony, I realized I'd never really spoken about this before. I'd carried a lot of shame around with me for having experienced homelessness, for sleeping in hotels with my younger son. And that was such a healing process for me. And now I am part of We Make Indiana as an intern in hopes to become a full-time organizer. And we're actually raising money right now in hopes that I can be. Because I do currently work in housing, but I just graduated with my master's in social work as a macro major. And my passion is organizing community development.
I think there's a lot of power in those stories that people can share. And just to see, you're obviously someone who has worked hard, studied hard, and who's contributing to the community, but still are not able to, or for a long time, was not able to get housing. And that's, I think the stories, the relationships, those things together, I think are a powerful tool to actually get city government to empathize.
Right.
I think that empathy these days is a little bit lost on some people, and there's almost like a coordinated effort to almost shame empathy.
Right.
And I think we really need more, not less of it, if we want to have something that I think of as a prosperous society is one where everyone can participate and feel like they are, appreciated in the society that they live in. So,
something that came to mind is, this was said at the last meeting for We Make Indiana, which was last Tuesday, and we had a lot of new faces because we had held our forums, and a lot of people are sitting at home right now feeling like they have no hope and they have no power, and everything's kind of just out of their control, and that's not true. We need to hear their voices. We need to hear their stories. We need them to come out. And I think that's really important to hear people's stories because you never know what someone has been through. And we hear these stigmas and we hear these generalizations, and no one person is the same.
No.
And I do agree that for empathy comes so second nature to me that it's hard for me when I'm around people without it. And I have to remind myself that, not everybody's like me, and that's very apparent in the world. But also that doesn't mean that they can't hear your story and empathize with that.
Yeah, I don't think people who may seem to have maybe a politic that is seemingly unempathetic do not possess empathy. I think they have empathy. And I think that they may think that the policies or the politics that they hold are, in a wraparound way, the most empathetic. I'm not going to go into details there, but I think more people, no matter if they're left or right, most people have maybe experienced, wow, this rent is very high.
Yeah.
I am struggling with this, and where can I go to actually talk about this? Well, there's We Make Indiana. Let me ask you, when do they meet? If somebody's listening and they're like, you know what, I'd like to talk about it with some other people. And
yeah, so We Make Indiana, we have monthly chapter meetings. And like I said, we just held our last meeting October 28th. And our next meeting is actually going to be the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. So that would be November 25th. We meet at 6:30 p.m. at Christ Lutheran Church. And our meetings go about an hour and a half long. And then we don't meet in December, but then we will start meeting monthly in January.
Okay.
Continuing on. And as far as that, I mean, like I said, Paul Schreiner's a member. You can reach out to me, Serena Fugate. You can reach out to Garrett Blatt or Andre Stoner, Dion Miller. They're all organizers for We Make Indiana. And then Valparaiso, we have Paul Jakowski. I know that you interviewed him as well for something else.
Yeah.
He's a member.
Oh, okay.
And I work closely with him with St. Paul.
Okay.
Yeah, or if you go to like St. Andrews or St. Paul or First Christian, Living Hope, Christ Lutheran, all of those churches are involved with We Make Indiana.
With their leadership or?
So I would say that Pastor Rich at Living Hope, he does support what we do, as well as Father Doug at the Catholic Church as well. However, Christ Lutheran is very involved, and their leadership supports us. They let us have our monthly chapter meetings there. But all of our leaders from our implementation team come from one of those congregations, so they're highly involved.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like I said, our next chapter meeting would be November 25th at 6:30, Christ Lutheran.
So November 25th, if you want to share your story on housing unaffordability, then that's the place to go. It doesn't really matter your politics. It's about sharing this problem that is just basically fundamentally human, not political. And hopefully with sharing that, we can make some change. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd love to have you.
All right. Well, maybe I'll go.
Okay.
That's everything that I have. If you have anything, I've said that like 3 times, but thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And you're my last interview for this first episode on affordable housing with a nonprofit perspective. So I'm excited to get this thing out. Maybe this Wednesday.
Okay.
We'll see. But thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Bye.